your heart, it should be mechanical ventilation. That is, when you talk about mechanical ventilation, you should it's supposed to be very near to your heart. Why? Because in fact that it's something that we should be able to do best. Because if you can do this best, your patient does well. So basics is very important. You don't need to do hi-fi stuff. If you do the basics well, 90% of the times you're doing fantastic work. 90% of the time fantastic work. You don't need to do the hi-fi stuff. Hi-fi stuff comes when your basics are strong. If your basics are not strong, I can't go to the hi-fi stuff. It doesn't make sense. Doing assessment of recruitability and FRC, it will not make sense only unless you know the basics properly. Okay, so I'm surprised we didn't do this. We should have done this a while ago. Well, what you must understand is there are different settings to consider. How you monitor your patients, there are different types of patients and troubleshooting. We go through all these things. Okay, ventilator settings. So whenever we talk about ventilator, we talk about field, we talk about mode, we talk about respiratory rate. And refined critical care medicine is ventilators. Ventilator is refined critical care medicine. So that is why you should know the ventilator much better than anybody, any physician in any of your colleagues. You should probably know ventilation more than anybody. Okay. So when we talk about ventilation, there are a few things that you must understand. Ventilator mode, respiratory rate, tidal volume, pressure setting, inspiratory flow, I ratio, peak, FRP, and inspiratory trigger. Okay, now what is the difference between spontaneous breathing and mechanical ventilation? Mechanical ventilation is actually positive pressure, whereas spontaneous breathing is negative pressure. So, yes, did we construct the plateau pressure curve the other day?
Plateau pressure.
Plateau pressure.
P1 P1 more than P2. Did we there? You remember? P1 more than P2, then air goes inside and plateau becomes, and then it goes up and all these things. We discussed that, right? So that is because it was positive pressure. When you see negative pressure, what is happening if this is pressure and this is time? Okay, pressure and time. These are called as scalars. These are called as scalars. When you have graph that looks like this, they are called as scalars. When you have graphs that look like loops, they are called as loops. Okay, so there are scalars and loops. Okay, scalars and loops, right? Scalars and loops. These are called as scalars. Scalars are always pressure versus time, volume versus time, flow versus time. Scalars are always pressure versus time, flow versus time, volume versus time. This is what you're going to see on your ventilator. You're going to see scalars. Okay, you may want to see loops if you are interested in seeing loops, but usually what is seen colloquially generally is scalars. So let us look at a scalar of spontaneous ventilation. So if you look at spontaneous inspiration, what is going to happen? The pressure is first going to become negative. That's why you breathe like this, it becomes negative. That is why air is going from outside to inside. Air is going from outside to inside because inside it is negative. So negative pressure, and then as air goes inside, there is an equalization of pressure and there is an expiration. So inspiration, expiration. That's what you must understand. In the scalar, you have inspiration, you have expiration when there is spontaneously breathing. But when you are doing mechanically ventilated patient, it is the absolute opposite of it. You start with positive pressure, and remain positive. You don't go to negative pressure unless the patient takes a breath. You understand? You remain positive all the time. So that's the reason that this kind of thing can be extremely harmful and difficult and discomforting for anyone. Okay, because you are thinking of breathing inside and the ventilator is actually pushing air inside. So it's discomforting for anyone. You know, when the patient is having, you are breathing like this, but they are not allowing you to breathe out properly. This is what happens. It is discomforting. It is discomforting. So ventilator per se is completely non-physiological. It's completely non-physiological. Our attempt is to make it as closely physiological as possible to our patient. So every time you stand with a ventilator, you should realize that there is something wrong occurring and I want to reduce the wrongness. That is the basic thing you are doing on the ventilator. You are trying to reduce the wrongness that is occurring. Okay, clear on this till now? That is why whenever I come on besides ventilator, I find so many things I change. And I tell you, I'll show you, see this is what has happened. So, you must be able to relate and think what is happening inside the patient by thinking what will happen to you. It becomes very easy. When you start thinking, okay, if I was, then this is what is going to happen, what is more comfortable. That's how you think, okay? So for that you must understand what are these phases. First, most important, a ventilator breath is normally divided into these 4 phases. Ventilator breath. Okay, which are these 4 breaths? These 4 breaths are change from expiration to inspiration, change from inspiration to expiration, and expiration. The ventilator decides this, or you decide this. The entire settings are based on these 4 things. everything that is set on the ventilator is based on these 4 things. Everything that is ventilated on this ventilator, everything that is set. Okay, so that is why when you think of if you think of a ventilator breath, you think of 3 things: TLC, trigger, limit, and cycle. You think of 3 things. So if I want to talk about any breath, I will say trigger, I will say limit, and I will say cycle. That is how I am going to talk about any breath inside. Okay, any breath inside. See, remember this, what I am doing is extreme basic. You want to go hi-fi, I can go super hi-fi. Okay, but what I am doing is extremely basic so that you understand the basics well. I love mechanical ventilation. You know, it's something that I like to do it again and again. Okay, but I can talk to you for hours on mechanical ventilation. But what I'm doing today is something that you need to know. Without knowing this, you can't ventilate patients. It is harmful to ventilate a patient if you don't know these things. Okay, so trigger, limit, and cycle is how you demonstrate any breath. If you want to talk about pressure control, there will be a trigger, there will be a limit, there will be a cycle. If you talk about volume control, there will be a trigger, there will be a... These modes are like 100 modes may be there. 100 modes may be there. We need one terminology to understand the mode, and this is the terminology that we use. Okay, unfortunately, terminologies have not been regularized. It has not been regularized कि वॉल्यूम कंट्रोल इसमें अगर दिख रहा है, दूसरे में किसमें असिस्ट कंट्रोल लगेगा, तीसरे में किसमें वॉल्यूम असिस्ट लगेगा. There will be all different terminologies. For the same mode, there will be different terminologies. Are you understanding? So what you see in your Draeger as controlled mode of ventilation, okay, would be seen in your GE as assist control mode of ventilation. You understand? What you see in your Draeger, what you see in your Hamilton as pressure support ventilation, PS, would be seen in Draeger as ASB, assisted spontaneous breathing. Understand? What you see in your GE as pressure control will be seen in your Draeger as BiPAP. Will be seen in your Draeger as BiPAP. The terminology changes, but the breath remains the same. The mode of delivery remains the same. That is why what you need to know is the mode of delivery. You're understanding? Huh? So you clear the point? Because tomorrow when you are going for an exam, what terminology is written you will not understand only unless you understand the breath type. Tomorrow when you are going to a second ICU, you will not realize only what kind of mode is happening unless you know what the waveform looks like. Unless you know what this is about. Are you understanding? कोई अगर तुमको बोला पेशेंट बाईपैप पे है, तुमको ऐसे पता चलेगा ये प्रेशर कंट्रोल है. BiPAP can be even bilevel positive airway pressure, which means IPAP and EPAP on an NIV, right? But in our Draeger, a BiPAP means what? Pressure control. Are you understanding? So it is very important for you to understand how the mode of delivery of the breath is. If you understand the mode of delivery of the breath, you understand the mode. Okay, and for that you understand, get the basics right. For that, these terminologies, trigger, limit, and cycle is something that we talk. A mode is just a way of delivering a breath, and that way is described by these things. Now, these are the things that you are setting. Apart from this, you also talk about one more terminology, which is the variable. You talk about the variable. So you set certain things, and there are some things that are variable. Okay, you set certain things which are constant, and there are some things that come out to be variable. So it is common sense that if I want to put the patient on a ventilator, I should be monitoring the variables because I have set the rest of the breath. The rest of the breath I have set, it is going to go the same way, but what I am going to monitor? The variables. So on my monitor ventilator, I need to see the variables. So when I come on my rounds and I don't see the variables there, I realize that you have not seen the ventilator. You understand? I don't tell you, but I know you have not seen the ventilator. Because if I want to see the ventilator, I know what I want to see. Then I change everything before I go. No? And then on my way out, I'm walking and say, oh, okay. One glance, I know it's fine. Understanding? So the variables have to be seen or monitored on your ventilator. Understanding this? Any doubts till now? Sachin, any doubts? No doubts, right? Huh?
Example of variable?
We'll come to that. We'll come to that as we go. So I did not know that I have not taken this. It's so important that this is done. Okay. So let's go to some modes, some terminologies. Okay. There are some terminologies. Don't consider this as the terminology, ऐसा मत सोचो. I'm just giving you an example. Now, say for example, in the ventilator there is something called continuous mechanical ventilation or CMV mode. If there is CMV mode, what will be the breath type? CMV in this, on another ventilator it may be called volume control, on the third ventilator it may be called assist control, on the fourth ventilator it may be called something else, it can be called anything. Okay, but what is this breath type? This breath type is, it can be called volume control, any mode you can call it. If pressure limited, it can be called pressure control. So, continuous mechanical mandatory ventilation can be either pressure controlled or it can be volume controlled. Clear? When you have continuous mechanical ventilation or continuous mandatory ventilation, it can be either pressure controlled or it can be volume controlled. Right? Now, let us look at this breath type. Okay? Okay. So, let's go to this breath. Okay, now, as I told you, what are these called as?
Scalars.
What are these called as? Scalars. These are called as scalars. So, what I am showing as scalars, you can actually interchange anything here, there, and you can do on the ventilator. So, when I am seeing this scalar, this is pressure over time, this is flow over time, and this is volume over time. That means what I am seeing here is volume, what I am seeing here is pressure, what I am seeing here is flow. Clear? What I see here is pressure, flow and volume. Clear? Now, what am I saying? What did we first initially say? That these are positive pressure ventilation. That's why all your breaths are above the baseline volume. It's positive pressure. If it went below the baseline, it would become negative. Now, in a patient that is sedated and paralyzed, patient cannot take a single breath. If the patient takes a breath, where the waveform will go?
Negative.
Which waveform will go down?
Inspiratory.
Which waveform will go out of these three waveforms? Which will go down? Pressure. It is a pressure waveform that will go down, na? Because pressure will become negative. Flow cannot become negative. Flow is always coming from the ventilator to the patient and from the patient to the ventilator, right? So that will become negative. Volume is always positive. You are always getting volume. Patient is always getting volume. So what you are going to get is only a pressure that could be negative. Clear on this? Here, so here you have flow in liters per minute, you have pressure and you have volume over time. Clear? So now let's put the trigger, limit and cycle here. Okay, do I have this right? Let me see. Okay, control. Oh, I don't have this. Okay, calculate like this only. Hold on. Alright. Now, what was trigger? Trigger is the initiation of a breath. Trigger is the
Initiation.
Clear? What causes the breath to start is the meaning of trigger. Simple? What causes the breath to start is the trigger. So, can you think of some triggers and tell me in your ventilation as to what could be a trigger? Time. That means, what does that mean? If I set a respiratory rate of, when I say time, let's understand what is time. Okay, if I set a respiratory rate of 10, okay, per minute, 10 in 60 seconds, right? 10 breaths in 60 seconds. One breath is 6 seconds.
6 seconds.
One breath is 6 seconds. That means 6 seconds, one breath will get over. 6 seconds, other breath will get over. When I say breath, it means inspiration and expiration. When I say breath cycle, it means inspiration and expiration. Clear? So I have 6 seconds here. I have 6 seconds here. So since I have said that the patient has, the trigger is time, that means after a certain time, the ventilator gives a breath. After a certain time, the ventilator gives the breath. Clear? Clear on this? So I have set a cycle of 6 seconds. So ventilator gives a breath at 6 seconds. First starts and then 6 seconds gets over, gives another breath. Trigger. So a trigger, that means the start of the ventilator inspiration will be here. The start of inspiration will be here. The start of inspiration will be here. Time trigger. Here, the trigger is only the inspiration. How the ventilator starts the breath. Clear? Clear? So you said time is one of the ways to start the breath. Then Then you have patient.
Patient.
Time is completely machine. Time is completely machine. And the second is trigger is patient. The patient might change the pressure or patient might change the flow. I'll explain to you what this is. Okay. Now we have time trigger here, right? Now let us take a condition where the patient is actually initiating a breath. This is a paralyzed patient. Deeply sedated patient who does not have any breathing per se. Paralyzed patient. I have another patient who is basically breathing. So when he breathes, what does the patient do? Patient takes a breath. This is negative. This is negative. So when he's taking a breath, what should my pressure trace be? Below the baseline. Below the baseline. Clear? So if I am taking a negative pressure and that is the reason why the ventilator is triggering, it is called as a patient initiated breath, patient triggered breath, and the trigger is pressure trigger. Clear? So I will say I will set the pressure trigger at -3. If I set the pressure at -3 means at -3 the ventilator will decide to give the breath. If I set at -2, if the patient takes a trigger of -2, the ventilator will deliver the breath. If I put the trigger as -5 and the patient takes only 2, the ventilator will not give the breath. Clear? Clear about pressure trigger? Am I clear on pressure trigger? Any queries till now on pressure trigger?
Sir, so if you set the trigger at -5 and the patient takes only 2, then it won't give the breath.
It will not give the breath. No, because you have set the trigger. I have set the trigger as -5.
So
So if
if you not set the trigger,
you will always have to set the trigger. We'll come to that. That if you have not set, if you have set if the trigger you have not set, then it becomes machine trigger. No,
then also patient is taking breath.
patient is
Taking breath, will it be machine?
no. Then that becomes problem. It becomes ineffective. What you are normally trying to do? What did we start by saying? We are trying to get the ventilator as close as possible to the physiology. We are trying to get the ventilator as close as possible to the physiology. Right? What are we trying to do? Trying to get the ventilator as close as possible to the physiology. This means to say, if the patient takes a breath, the ventilator gives the breath. मतलब it is coordinating with the patient's brain. भाई breath लिया, चलो उसको दे दो. We want him to do that. Now in the sense, if I make it a machine trigger, patient breath लेने की कोशिश कर रहा है लेकिन ventilator breath नहीं दे रहा है. It is like choking, no? I'm not getting breath. It's like choking. Okay, if I put a pillow on your face, you can't breathe. You're trying to breathe, you can't breathe. That becomes ineffective for the patient. It causes asynchrony. Asynchrony means it is fighting the ventilator. It is not allowing, it is not coordinating with the ventilator. It is not synchronous. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? So if a patient is breathing, and you have not set a trigger, what will happen? The patient might want to take a breath. Here, anywhere, but the ventilator will not give the breath. So what will happen with this? Asynchrony. Patient will get tired. These patients will have prolonged ventilator stay. These patients will have neuromuscular weakness. These patients will develop other kinds of problems. Will develop atelectasis. Other problems patient will develop. Are you understanding? That should not occur. And that is what you want to figure out by looking at your graphics. Keep my voice my trigger effective. Is it ineffective? What is happening? You understand? What exactly I want? I want that the patient takes a breath and the ventilator gives the breath.
Trigger means that point for point. What is that exactly?
Pressure.
Pressure.
Yeah, so when I say pressure trigger, it means, say I said pressure trigger of -2, means if the patient takes a breath of -2 pressure at the airway, pressure at the airway -2, breath goes inside.
Flow trigger कैसे होता
So I'm coming to that now. Okay, so pressure trigger you understood? What have you understood pressure trigger? That negative अगर हुआ, तो इसलिए pressure trigger अब set करो तो -2, -3, -4, -1 ऐसा आता है. But when you say flow trigger, it is +1, +2, +3, +4. Flow trigger is upwards. Why is that so? So the ventilator is a circuit that starts. Say this is the ventilator. This is the inspiratory limb. This is the expiratory limb. Okay, this is how it is. This is to the patient. But this is to the ventilator. ठीक है? This is to the patient. Endotracheal tube. Inspiratory limb, say expiratory limb, and that is the ventilator. See ऐसा है. ठीक है? What happens on the ventilator circuit is very intelligent. Intelligently, there is a bias flow going on. There is a flow going on inside like a circle. There's a flow going on. There's a flow going on all the time. There's a very tiny flow going on all the time. So when the patient takes a breath, the flow will slightly change. When the patient takes a breath, initiates a breath or takes a breath, the flow will slightly change. थोड़ा flow इधर आ जाएगा. समझ में आ रहा है? थोड़ा flow इधर आ जाएगा. समझ में आ रहा है? वो पॉजिटिव हो गया क्योंकि हवा यहाँ से जा रहा है. So if it takes +1 or if it takes +2, if I said +2, if I said say +2, if that flow is +2, the ventilator initiates the breath. समझ में आ रहा है? So now you understood pressure trigger. Pressure trigger once more is patient takes a breath but the pressure is changing. There's no flow change. There's only a pressure change, right? There's a pressure change. The ventilator is set to find pressure change. But what's happening in a flow trigger? The flow that is going as a circle around the ventilator, around the circle that is going, when the bias flow that's going there, that flow slightly changes when the patient takes a breath. Clear? That is called as flow trigger. समझ में आ रहा है? And depending on what you have said, +1, +2, +3, +4, the ventilator initiates the breath. So if you said +5, that means to say the patient has to have large amount of flow change to actually initiate the breath.
So how much should be set like?
So it's usually it doesn't. So how much you just said is, say for example you have a patient who is on the ventilator. Okay, how much trigger to set you're asking basically.
Yes,
okay, so it depends on how your graphics are. So if the patient, say for example, is a strong patient, okay, on an average 3 is fine, on an average -3 is fine, on an average +3 is fine, on an average. Okay, now the problem is if you set it at 1. Now if you set it at 1, for example you kept it as 1, what will happen? Even if the flow is set at +1, even if the patient's thoracic cage पे रखा है ना, वो heart का oscillation आता है ना, टक 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 टक. Even with that, there will be a change in the flow, and the change in the flow will be picked up by the ventilator and it will auto trigger. This is called as auto trigger. So why is that 1 there? Because pediatric भी तो होता है. That ventilator can be used in pediatric babies, बच्चों, small kids, small weight. You understand? हाँ, तो trigger. Got the point? अगर बहुत ज़्यादा कर दिया trigger, मैंने 5 रख दिया trigger,
पता नहीं चलेगा.
वो लेने की कोशिश कर रहा है लेकिन वो ट्रिगर ही नहीं हो रहा है, तो ये इनइफेक्टिव हो जाएगा. अगर इनइफेक्टिव हो गया तो पेशेंट गेट टायर्ड, डिफिकल्ट टू फटीग, एवरीथिंग विल स्टार्ट बिकॉज़ ही इज नॉट गेटिंग द ब्रेथ जब भी आएगा जब वाल्व खुलेगा. ट्रिगर की वजह से तुम्हारा वाल्व खुल जाता है, इंस्पिरेटरी ट्रिगर की वजह से तुम्हारा इंस्पिरेटरी वाल्व खुल जाता है तो हवा आता है अंदर. अगर पेशेंट का इंस्पिरेटरी वाल्व खुला ही नहीं है तो वो ब्रेथ लेगा, आएगा नहीं, ही विल चोक, ही विल नॉट फील ओके. समझ में आ रहा है? So on an average 3 inspiratory trigger is fairly okay. Is there a difference between pressure trigger and flow trigger? No. Initially we thought that pressure trigger, flow trigger is better than pressure trigger and more comfortable for the patient because it's a small flow that you need to change. But it has never been proven that the pressure trigger is better than the flow trigger. That is why both the options are there on the ventilator. That is why some ventilators don't even have pressure, they have just flow. Some have only pressure because it doesn't make a difference whether it is pressure trigger or it is flow trigger. Clear? So now we have 2 triggers: machine trigger, patient trigger. Patient trigger can be flow trigger or can be pressure trigger. Clear? Clear till now? Clear? So here, so that is a trigger. That you understood trigger now. Have you understood trigger? Now the next thing is limit. What is limit? Any idea what is limit? What limits the breath? So if you can explain to me what it means? No, it limits the breath means
Where it ends.
where it ends is called a cycle.
Cycle.
The conversion from inspiration
inspiration.
to expiration is cycle. Conversion from inspiration to expiration is cycle. That's where it ends. That's where the inspiration is ending. Okay, that's the inspiration ending. Limit is I have kept a certain limit till which it should keep on delivering the breath. Till which it should deliver the breath. That is the limit. For example, let us go to this. Let us go to this waveform. So here, what is the trigger? Machine. So if it's machine, what could it be?
Time.
So here the trigger is time. You've understood? Anyone who doesn't understand this, that this is not time. This is machine trigger and subtype उसका time है. Clear? What is the limit here? What is the limit here? What kind of mode this is? Controlled mode of ventilation. So in this mode, what is happening? You have a variable pressure is variable. Whereas volume is constant. You can see, you can obviously see this. The volume is constant. The pressure is variable. अलग-अलग pressure जा रहा है, अलग-अलग pressure जा रहा है. लेकिन volume is constant. एक ही volume जा रहा है, एक ही volume जा रहा है, एक ही volume जा रहा है. ठीक है? So the limit is volume. I have limited it to the volume. मतलब 300 ml देके वो रुक जाएगा. 400 ml अगर सेट किया तो 400 ml देके वो रुक जाएगा. समझ में आ रहा है? Clear on this? Clear on this? Okay. And then cycling is conversion from inspiration to expiration. Where is it converting from inspiration to expiration? Alia, come and show me. Where is it converting? Which point is it converting from inspiration to expiration? Come. Put your finger and show us.
This is your inspiration, and then from here comes expiration.
So how do you find an inspiration and expiration here? What is expiration? From inside to outside? It's ulta. What is ulta here?
Ulta is lower.
Okay. So understand. So what happens over here is, you are understanding now? Inspiration is inside, expiration is outside, right? Expiration is a passive process. Expiration is not something that I can control. Expiration is from the patient. So it will be very variable. Which is the variable thing here? Expiration. Okay. So inspiration is ending here. It is cycling here to expiration. You understand? That's how you are getting this waveform. So inspiration ends here. So now you put it down. The inspiration is ended here. Now you put it down. Inspiration is ended here. Clear? Clear on this? So what is the cycling here? Sorry?
Flow cycle.
It's not flow cycling. What flow cycling is this? What is happening over here? Here the patient is converting from inspiration to expiration based on a time. What have we done in this patient? We have set the this as 10. For example, let us take this as 10. Now what you have set over here is you have set an I ratio 1:2. You have set an I ratio 1:2. That means क्या हो गया? 6 सेकंड का एक ब्रेथ साइकिल हो गया. 6 सेकंड का एक ब्रेथ साइकिल हो गया. अगर मैंने 1:2 सेट किया तो कितना हो गया? 2 seconds inspiration, 4 seconds expiration. Breath cycle 2 seconds, 4 seconds हो गया. Clear? 2 seconds and 4 seconds. You are clear on this till now? 2 seconds and 4 seconds. मैंने क्या बोला है? Inspiration is 2 seconds, expiration is 4 seconds. That means I am controlling it by time. मैंने उनको क्या बोला है कि cycle it with respect to time. मतलब 2 seconds inspiration होने के बाद go to expiration. You understand? So it is time cycle. So if I would see this is machine triggered breath, time that is. It is limited by volume. It is limited by volume. Okay, because I have dialed the dial I told इतना में limit कर दो भाई. 300 अगर बोला तो 300 दो, उसके ऊपर 2 नहीं. ठीक है? 300 दो, उसके ऊपर 2 नहीं. And then I am cycling it with respect to time again. I am cycling it with respect to time again. So in this mode of delivery, whatever the mode may be, is a machine triggered time, that is time triggered, volume limited and time cycled mode, and the variable here now is pressure. The variable here is now pressure, because that is not under my control. The pressure is not under my control. The pressure is not under my control. So what do I have to monitor here? I should be monitoring my pressure. I should be monitoring my peak pressure. I should be monitoring my plateau pressure, because this is not under my control. Clear? That is a variable. Clear? Clear on this? Understood this mode? Understood this mode? Trigger. So you are on the anesthesia machine. Everything is this only, because you paralyze your patient. You understand? On our patients down there who don't have a respiratory drive and they are on volume control, it is this. Okay, but now you must understand that in the ICU, if you put this, it is harmful, no? Why is it harmful?
Always not sanitary.
We never know. It's not like anesthesia कि paralyze करते रह रहे हैं. हम लोग का patient को hardly paralyze करते हैं. So our patients are usually breathing, and what we want to do in ventilation, be as close as possible to the physiology. If I don't be as close as possible to the physiology, I am harming the patient. You understand? So is it good to have this kind of ventilator in the ICU? So can we have an anesthesia machine in the ICU? You understand? Huh? You got the point? Clear on this? So that is why nowadays we don't have this form of ventilation. We don't have this form of ventilation. It is not there. It is replaced by another form. Okay. Now let's go to this. Let us go to this. Now don't look what is written on top. Don't look at what is written on top. Take the bread type here. So what is the time here? What is the trigger here? What is the trigger? Machine trigger. Why is it machine trigger, Kanchan?
Because it's cycling. It's positive.
What is trigger?
Time.
What is trigger?
What initiate them?
Initiating a breath. How is the breath getting initiated here?
Positive.
Is the patient doing anything here? How do you know it's not doing anything? It's all positive. So what do you think this is?
Time trigger.
Time. That is machine or time trigger. What is the limit here?
Volume.
Why you say that? Because the pressure is constant. I set the pressure. I said तुम 20 pressure पहुंचोगे तो रखो वैसे ही that is my limit. I'm limiting my inspiration. I'm limiting my inspiration to this limit. I have not changed the inspiration to expiration yet. I have only limited to this pressure. Volume I am limited to a certain volume. I am told the volume कि भाई 400 तक पहुंचो. But इसमें क्या बोला मैंने 20 तक पहुंचो. I have reached till 20. So I limited it at 20 for example. So this is limit is pressure. Limit is pressure. Clear? हाँ, so you will tell me अरे ये भी तो वैसे ही तो था. इसमें हमने इसको pressure limit कर दिया, इसको तो flow limit कर दिया हम लोग ने. ऐसा बोलोगे ना? क्योंकि अभी जैसा हम लोगों ने pressure देखा ये भी है. But no, these are waveforms. These are flow waveforms. This I can set. Tomorrow this is called a square waveform. Square waveform. I can make it decelerating waveform. From the ventilator I can change that. You're understanding? I can change the flow from being square flow to decelerating flow pattern. I can do that. You're understanding? But what I'm going to look at is here, right? So when I come here, what is the difference here? Is that there is pressure control, that is, it is limited by pressure and cycled by time. Because what have I done? I have just set an I ratio. I said pressure control रखो, time में उसको cycle कर दो. Clear? What is the variable here? Volume. Because the volume is going to vary. So on a pressure control mode, what do I need to see? My volumes. I need to see my volumes. So if in a volume control mode, seeing my volume isn't making sense. If in my volume control mode, if I'm going to put volume in my monitoring chart, what is the point? In my monitoring of the ventilator, मेरे को एक नजर से पता होना चाहिए ना क्या हो रहा है when I'm walking about. ठीक है? If I put a volume, then what is the point? I've set 400. क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला? Are you understanding? So that's why it's not ideal, not logical to have volume monitored in a volume control mode, but it is logical to have volume monitored in a pressure control mode. Are you understanding? Why? Because if I set 20 pressure and the compliance changes, compliance reduces, the volume going inside will reduce. If I set pressure of 20 and the compliance changes, okay, what is going to happen to the volume? It will reduce. So I will know, that's why it's variable, that's why it varies. Similarly, the other way around, in a volume control mode, if a patient starts having bronchoconstriction, the pressure will go up. So I will know by this the pressure is going up. So that's why the variables have to be seen on your ventilator monitoring. On that monitor of the ventilator, you should see the variables. Clear? Clear on this? Now you will tell me what is this then. So usually, generally, whenever you have pressure control mode of ventilation, most of the ventilators actually go to a decelerating flow wave pattern. The other one was square wave pattern. This is decelerating. So usually, when you put a patient on a pressure control mode, the ventilators go to a decelerating flow wave pattern. You understand? But don't look at this and decide whether this is volume control or pressure control. Otherwise, you think ऐसा अगर दिखा तो volume control है, ऐसा अगर दिखा तो pressure control है. Don't think like this. समझ में आ रहा है? Because I can change the flow pattern myself. I can change it. So tomorrow you can go to the ventilator, change the flow pattern yourself to square or decelerating flow wave pattern. What I have to see? I have to see the other waveform. Clear? Clear on this? So this is time. So TLC में क्या क्या आएगा इसमें? Time trigger machine, that is limit is pressure and cycle is time. So we have this volume control mode of ventilation that we just now see. Okay, now let us go to assist control. Now, because you know that volume control is something very dangerous, we cannot use this, it can cause problems. Now, all ventilators, modern ventilators, don't have controlled mechanical ventilation. Even if it's called CMV, it will still be assist control. It will still be assist control, even if it's called CMV. That's why I said don't look at terminology. That's why don't look at terminology. Don't look at what is written on the ventilator. CMV लिखा है, VC लिखा है, क्या लिखा है, देखो नहीं. Okay, you understand the breath type, then you understand what we're dealing with. So let's go to this breath type. Okay, what is happening here? Let us see. Okay, so here we have a regular square flow pattern on the flow. Earlier you see that the volume remains constant. Okay, now let us see what is going to happen here. Okay, there is something like this that goes on top. Something like this that goes on top. What has changed? Only the trigger has changed. Only the trigger has changed. So now, what kind of a trigger this is? Patient trigger. Patient trigger. Okay, this is patient trigger. What is the limit? Volume, because that is what is constant. What is the cycle? Time. Because I initially have said. So every assist control mode will have a pressure. Will have a patient trigger. It may be flow or pressure. Flow and pressure both will look like this only. Okay. Because you set it.
So whatever we set based on that.
So everything will be down only because it's patient initiated. Okay. Patient initiated. That is patient trigger limited by volume here and cycled by time. Clear on this? Clear?
The cycle will always be time.
We come to that. We are just finished. We are not in the modes. No, we are just in part of the mode as of now. We have not gone to the other cycles. Okay. So you are under assist control now. So this means to say what will happen is in this mode what is going to happen? Say tomorrow I breathe fast. What will happen to the ventilator? It will assist each breath. You understand? If I breathe fast tomorrow, it will assist each breath. This can be problematic. So if the patient has got fever, patient will breathe faster, 40 respiratory rate he will breathe. If you breathe 40, he will get 40 breaths or 400. What you have said. समझ में आ रहा है? You're understanding? So it can go into extreme respiratory alkalosis. Are you understanding what I'm saying? हाँ? नहीं समझा? अभी you have a patient who is on volume control. So you have a patient on volume control, ठीक है? You have a patient in a controlled delivery breath, which is triggered by patient, limited by volume, and cycled by time. You have understood this? Triggered by patient, limited by volume and time, which you colloquially call as volume control. No? In this terminology, we call it as assist control. Right? We call it assist control. Now, you have set a tidal volume. In this, what are you setting? You are setting the trigger. I set the trigger as -2. Or -3, I set the trigger because it's a patient trigger. I set the volume as 400 ml and I set the time as 12 breaths or 10 breaths, for example. 10 breaths. That means every 6 seconds the breath will go, okay, and it will try to synchronize with the patient's breath. Okay? I set the breath here also. I have set the breath here. Others you think I set the breath so it becomes machine trigger. No, I set the breath. But what it is doing? It is waiting for that time when the patient is taking a breath and then synchronizing with that. ठीक है? समझ में आया सचिन की नहीं?
Sir, what?
I'll explain to you now. अगर इसको मैंने चेंज करके मैंने बोला कि trigger is a machine, limit is volume and cycling is time. इसमें भी मैंने क्या सेट किया? इसमें trigger मैंने सेट नहीं किया है, because machine है. हाँ? इसमें मैंने वॉल्यूम सेट किया 400 और उस पे व्हाट इज दिस टाइम आई सेट एज 10. क्लियर ऑन दिस? नाउ in this what am I going to do? In this it is going to be like this. There are breaths 6 seconds 6 seconds 6 seconds 2 seconds and 4 seconds. So यहाँ पर वो इंस्पिरेशन देगा बंद हो जाएगा. हाँ, फिर यहाँ तक आएगा इंस्पिरेशन देगा बंद हो जाएगा. हाँ, ऐसा फ्लो ऐसा आएगा, इंस्पिरेशन clear with the flow, the pressure will look like this. Since it's volume control, it will be up down ऐसा, up down ऐसा, up down ऐसा, ठीक है? Clear on this? This is flow, this is pressure, right? Now what will happen here? Since you have now initiated the patient to take a breath, what is going to happen here is you have set a 6 second window you have set, ना? Because तुमने 10 set करके रखा हुआ है. What will do? Say patient has taken a breath here. For example, patient has initiated the breath. It has gone up. Inspiration, expiration हो गया. Inspiration, expiration हो गया. Okay. Now patient is आराम से relaxing. Now patient takes a breath somewhere here. Before that 6 seconds. Before that 6 seconds. Before that मुझे देखेगा. You understand? अगर समझ लो पेशेंट ऐसा हो गया 6 सेकंड हो गया और अभी यहाँ पर 6 सेकंड इसको हो गया है, 6 सेकंड हो गया लेकिन पेशेंट ने ब्रेथ नहीं दिया तो क्या करेगा? मशीन दे देगा. There will be no trigger. समझ में आ रहा है? इसका मतलब क्या है कि अगर पेशेंट ने इधर एक ब्रेथ लिया, एक और ब्रेथ लिया, एक और जाएगा, एक और ब्रेथ लिया, एक और जाएगा, एक और ब्रेथ लिया, एक और जाएगा. समझ में आ रहा है?
So machine will deliver less.
Machine will not deliver only because patient delivering so much. You understand? So if you have a patient in pain, if you have a patient in fever, if you have a patient with heightened metabolism, what is going to happen is this patient is going to breathe faster and the machine is going to support also that much. So if you have set volume 400 at time of 10, that means you have a 10 respiratory rate, and he breathes 30, he will get 400 into 13. That's 1.2. 12 liters. You'll get 12 liters. Where you are supposed to give 410, that is 4 liters. समझ में आ रहा है? You understood the reason why you should be taking care of the fever and the heightened pain and the metabolism now in your usual ventilation? Because if you don't take care of the fever, what is going to happen? If you don't take care of the pain, what is going to happen is the patient will have very high minute ventilation. If the patient has very high minute ventilation, you may cause many other problems, which includes hypocalcemia, which includes tetany, which includes depression of the respiratory drive, which includes the fact that there will be more volume that is coming into the lung, more inflation of the lung. There can be auto PEEP, there can be dynamic hyperinflation, over distension of the lung. Because what the ventilator is going to do, it is going to give that 400.
So we can reduce that volume in this case.
So what to do in that is not reduce the volume. What to do is here is treat the fever, treat the pain. Are you understanding? Treat the fever, treat the pain. अगर तुम पेशेंट को कम वॉल्यूम दोगे तो सपोर्ट कम हो गया ना उसका. पेशेंट को ज्यादा चाहिए इसलिए तो ज्यादा लेने की कोशिश कर रहा है वो. तुम उसको कम कर दोगे तो प्रॉब्लम ज्यादा हो जाएगा. उसको ज्यादा चाहिए, प्रॉब्लम ये हो गया है. ज्यादा क्यों चाहिए? क्योंकि उसको फीवर हो गया है. Are you understanding? So the answer what he says is important. What he says is चलो टाइटल वॉल्यूम कम कर दो ना, हो गया कम हमारा. लेकिन टाइटल वॉल्यूम कम करेगा तो he will not get the requirement ना, उसका मेटाबॉलिज्म ज्यादा है इसलिए तो ब्रीथ कर रहा है इतना वो. Are you understanding? So you cannot reduce the tidal volume. What you have to do here? Treat the problem. And if the problem is not getting treated, paralyze the patient. Otherwise इसकी problems अलग है. इसकी problems for long term is what? Volume इतना अगर तुम 12 लीटर अंदर दोगे हर मिनट में 12 लीटर दोगे तो पूरा lungs inflate हो जाएगा. डायनामिक हाइपरइंफ्लेशन हो जाएगा, ओवर डिस्टेंशन हो जाएगा, फुग्गी जैसा बड़ा हो जाएगा, वो बेरोट्रोमा होएगा, दुनिया भर का प्रॉब्लम होएगा. बार-बार ओपन क्लोज अगर हो रहा है तो एटलेक ट्रॉमा हो जाएगा. बार-बार तुम उसको एक लंग को स्ट्रेस कर रहे हो ना, उसमें इतना बार आरआर हो रहा है तो बराबर, बिकॉज़ एवरीथिंग इज उल्टा. इट इज नो लॉन्गर नेगेटिव, पॉजिटिव जा रहा है. सो इट्स अ डिफरेंट फॉर्म ऑफ वेंटिलेशन. समझ में आ रहा है ना? सो अंडरस्टूड असिस्ट कंट्रोल. Understood assist control now? You understood the problems with assist control? Our usual mode we keep with assist control. So you must understand the problem. So if you see an RR that you have set as 12 and then you see an RR that is going at 36, you must try to figure out भाई क्या हो रहा है ये. तुमने सेट किया है 12 और पेशेंट का फ्रीक्वेंसी 36 है. So what you are thinking now? There is some reason that is causing this. This patient is triggering the ventilator more often. There is some acidosis, there is some fever, there is some sepsis, there is something somewhere which is triggering this patient. So find the problem and treat that. Are you understanding? Just because the patient is not showing any signs, that doesn't make the ventilator giving you information. वो वेंटर बता रहा है तेरे को भाई there is something wrong with this patient, he is breathing very fast. You have to figure out what is wrong. समझ में आ रहा है? So when you writing your notes on volume control, patient breath set at 10, however patient taking so much frequency, that should come there. अगर तुमने सेट किया 12 और तुम 24 ले रहे हो, there is something wrong or it doesn't require the ventilator, something is wrong, ना there. You're understanding? हाँ? समझ में? Or you are not set the right ventilator. Probably you need higher breaths. Probably not set the right tidal volume. You understand? There can be so many problems. Maybe he has small tidal volumes, so he requires higher minute ventilation, and so he's breathing faster to get that higher minute ventilation. With that breathing faster, what is happening? There is more opening, closing, more biotrauma, more atelectrauma. You understand? I don't want that to occur. I want to give exactly what the patient wants. Clear? We want to be as close as possible to the physiology. Clear on assist control? Clear? What is this? Now what is this? Let's take two different breaths. Now what you can understand here, there are two different breaths. There are two different breaths here, right? You are seeing one breath type here, which is similar to this breath type. And you are seeing a second breath type that is here. There are two breath types. Let's not look at that. That is nothing, that doesn't make sense. Here you have a breath type, and here you have another breath type. Clear on this? Clear till now? So let us see what is this. Now forget this part of the center and look at just this and this. Okay. So Niharika, what is the trigger here? What is the trigger here? Patient. Because of this. There is a patient trigger. What is the limit here?
Volume.
Why volume?
Because it's constant.
No.
Pressure.
What is this? How is the breath limited? By a constant tidal volume. The breath is limited by a constant tidal volume. इसको भूल जाओ, center को भूल जाओ. There is a constant tidal volume here. So how can this be? How can this be pressure? Where is the constant pressure? Where is pressure waveform? Either out, come here. Where is your pressure waveform? Come here. Where is the pressure waveform here? So is this constant?
No.
It's variable. You have one pressure here, you have one pressure here, one pressure is variable. So can this be controlled? Pressure control? It can't be. It cannot be. Whatever sense this cannot be pressure control. What you can say is normal is the volume and the volume, which is constant. Clear? So this is definitely not pressure control. When I look at this breath and this breath, it looks like the same tidal volume. Okay, and what is the cycling here? It's time. Because I set it. I set it over here. कि time is the time के बाद वो cycle हो जाओ. I इसको set कर दिया है. Okay, clear on this? Clear till now? Now let us look at this breath type. Okay, let's look at this breath type. What is the trigger? Patient trigger. What is the limit?
Volume.
Patient.
Patient. There is no limit only, no.
Patient.
There is a limit only. Patient is taking this breath on his own only. What is constant here? That is patient taking, no. Patient is taking
Not
initially
going
the
up.
breath.
There is no machine. It's not going up.
There is a machine, there is a thing. So this is the patient. The limit is determined by the patient. Okay, I am going to take how much I want to take. And what is the cycle? Again patient. Inspiration to expiration, again patient. You understand? Patient is deciding what it wants to do. So this is SIMV. SIMV, synchronized intermittent mandatory ventilation. And in the middle, patient is breathing on his own. So the difference, what is happening over here is, when the patient wants to take a breath, what is the difference between SIMV and volume control now here, or assist control? What is the difference here? Assist control, now I taught you assist control just 2 minutes ago, right? I taught you assist control, which look like this, right? What is the difference between this and this?
Sir, if patient.
Sachin?
Sir, if in this patient is taking, machine will not interfere in it.
Sorry?
If patient is taking a breath, machine will not
It will not give that breath, but the machine is not giving that breath, but it is allowing the patient to breathe. What is the difference between this and controlled mandatory ventilation?
Same. In that,
And what happens
all
when the patient takes a
average
breath?
patient.
It doesn't allow to take the breath, the valves don't open. You understand? Here what is happening?
It
Valves are
allows
opening. That's the opening, so it's allowing the patient to take a breath. समझ में आ रहा है? That breath is determined by the patient. वो 100 ml या 50 ml या 1000 ml या that is taken by the patient. So there are two breath types here. One is patient triggered, limited by volume and cycled by time, and the other is patient triggered, limited by patient and cycled also by patient. Completely spontaneous breath. That's why you are having a sinusoidal pattern where it goes down and tries to come up. That's why it goes down and tries to come up like a sinusoidal pattern. We said no spontaneous breath. We said spontaneous breath is negative and then comes out of. We saw the first graph that we saw. So this is spontaneous. Clear? So let's go ahead, and this is what is the spontaneous breaths, and those are the volume targeted breaths. Now let's come here. Now what is happening here? So let's again divide this into our breath types. So this is one breath type, and this is the other breath type. Right? Now what is this breath type, Alia? Trigger?
Patient.
Patient trigger because you have this. Limit?
Volume.
Volume because the volume remains the same. Cycle? Time cycle. Clear on this till now? So this is a volume oriented breath. This is a clear cut volume oriented breath. Okay. Now what is happening here? What is the trigger? This is another type, not this one. So your trigger? Patient. Why? Negative pressure. Okay. So Ruchika, what is the limit here?
Pressure.
Because I told the ventilator कितना pressure तक जाओ. So the pressure is limited. Okay. So pressure limited. Cycling.
Patient.
Because at that pressure the flow is changing.
So here it is stopping.
Yeah.
If it is stopping here, let me see what's happening here. So what is happening here is at this flow, it has gone into expiration. That means there is a certain flow at which it is going into expiration. At certain flow, it is going into expiration. That I can set. If my flow here is 100%, say this is 100. Okay, and I tell that flow cycle it at 25% of peak flow. So if this is 100 and this is say 25. So at 25% of the peak flow, it will cycle. So this is flow cycle. So this I have made the graph. No? So I'll explain to you once more. In time, what is happening is,
Putting the I ratio and
so at the end of the I ratio, what is happening to the flow? At the end of inspiration, what is happening? Flow is becoming 0. Flow is becoming
0.
Let's go back. So what's happening here? So this is happening is there is a patient that is triggering here, square waveform pattern. At this point, this is constant. At this point, what is happening? Suddenly, expiration is coming in. That means it doesn't, flow is not dependent. I have put the time in. If after this time, you just go to expiration. Right? Now what is happening here? Here what is happening is, flow instead of actually going in a square waveform pattern, if it was decelerating flow, what would happen? If this same thing was decelerating flow, what would happen? This entire thing will come till here.
So that we can select.
I'm selecting, so it can, but the decelerating will come till here. No?
Still come.
Expiration will come till here, because here expiration will end over here. You understand? Expiration will end over here, and expiration will start. If I go back and show you. What's happening here? Expiration and coming ending over here. Understand? Now what is happening in this case? In the case that we just now saw? Okay. Now what is happening here? That you have a flow that's coming here. Okay, and then it has decelerated rather than reaching the baseline. Before it has reached the baseline, it has gone into expiration. That means I have set it. मैंने उसको बोला है कि भाई baseline पे पहुंचना नहीं है. हाँ, जब वो 100% अगर ये 100% रहा तो मैं उसका 25% अगर पहुंच गया फ्लो, उसका स्पीड 25% फ्लो का स्पीड पहुंच गया, तो फिर उसको एक्सपिरेशन में चला जाओ, गो बैक टू एक्सपिरेशन. That's why it goes from 100% slowly coming down. The moment it reaches 25%, it expires. Right? So cycling from inspiration to expiration is determined by the flow generated. Depended by the flow, the percentage of the flow. That's why this is flow cycle. So I explain what kind of cycling, how can we have different cycling. This is different cycling. So that, clear now? Any queries?
Sir,
Any?
in the assist control to ventilation, control ventilation, the flow waveform will be always be square, or it can be decelerating coming to zero like in pressure.
I said no. You can select the flow. You can select a square. You can select a decelerating.
So how do you see?
It is there. Go to the ventilator. That's why stand this ventilator and see. On the ventilator, all this is there. You have a look at the ventilator. That's why you must be, you must know, you must be inquisitive to understand the buttons and the values to see on the ventilator. If you see that, you'll see so much of data comes from there that you can actually understand physiology from that. You can actually understand what's happening inside the patient. If you actually are understanding what's there on the ventilator, I'm telling you, if you knew the Hamilton inside out, you will probably be knowing inside out of the lung. I don't need anything. With the Hamilton, I can tell you what is happening inside, how much ARDS, what is happening, how much pulmonary embolism, what is the VQ, what is the dead space, what is the alveolar dead space, what is the arterial dead space, everything I can tell you with the Hamilton, because the numbers over there. With the G also I can do a lot of things to you. I can explain to you weaning failure, recruitment failure, just by looking at these graphs and these the analysis that you see inside that. Okay, but you should first understand basics. If you understand basics, then I can go, if I tell you, this, you can see this and you find out. But if you don't know the basics, I can't go ahead. Are you understanding? So clear on this? Pressure support?
So sir, this we're not setting the time on the right? Setting the flow.
I'm only setting the.
Flow, we're not setting the time for this.
I'm setting the time. Why is this now dual? This is a dual mode, no? Here SIMV, volume control with pressure support. What have I done? I have set the time for volume control. You understand? That's what's called SIMV pressure support. So what have I done is, if the patient say, let's take the example. Let's take the example. So you have a patient, I have said SIMV volume. I want to set SIMV plus pressure support. This is SIMV plus pressure support. I have set tidal volume as 400. I have set limit, that is the limit. I have set the I ratio as 1:2 and an RR of 10. That means every 6 seconds, if the patient is not going to breathe, it is going to give the breath. Clear? Every 6 seconds, because it's 10 breaths, no? So every 6 seconds, patient will get the breath. So if I paralyze a SIMV patient, it's going to be assist control. And if it's not assist, if the patient is not taking breath, it becomes control mandatory ventilation. Clear? Am I clear till now? I'm setting the trigger also here as -2. So if I paralyze, this becomes just normal mechanical ventilation, no trigger, nothing. Time cycled, flow, volume limited, and cycled by time. It's triggered by time. If the patient starts getting triggered, it becomes patient trigger. Now, what am I going to do here is the patient has taken a breath. I've set an I ratio here. So it has taken a breath, stop, and then gone into expiration. This is flow. And how is the pressure look? Pressure will look like this. Okay? It is supposed to go to expiration till here. Till here the expiration chal raha hai. This is the expiration happening by the flow, and this is the pressure. Clear on this till now? Clear? Now what happens in the SIMV mode? In the SIMV mode is once it goes into inspiration, now the patient is going to take a breath. He may take a breath here, he may take a breath here, he may take a breath here, thinking this is the graph. But the expiration might end here and he may take a breath here. If he takes a breath here, what will happen? It will give a pressure supported breath. Pressure supported breath. This breath. You understand? If it doesn't take this breath, here the next, this will start. Only difference between the earlier mode was, here every breath that the patient takes is now being supported by a pressure. That's why it's called SIMV pressure support. Clear? Clear on this? So in the case that the patient takes multiple breaths, Now, what happens? What is the difference between assist control and SIMV pressure support? What is happening in assist control multiple breaths?
Each
It's
time.
being given by the ventilator.
Same volume
Same
getting
volume.
supported. What is happening? SIMV pressure support and multiple breaths patient is taking.
Pressure.
Multiple,
Pressure.
patient is taking multiple breaths, but the volumes are inadequate. Maybe
As
inadequate.
the
Volume
patient's,
is
So what happens to your SIMV breath then?
So patient decides on how much volume.
Yeah,
वो तो प्रेशर सपोर्ट हो गया भाई, ये तो ड्यूल मोड है.
अच्छा इसमें
SIMV प्रेशर में क्या करेंगे?
It gives a pressure support.
it is acting like that only.
There's a difference. That's a difference that you must understand. There's a difference. So assist control, what happened?
Every
Each
breath
breath
is
is
supported.
Each breath was getting supported by the same volume that you have dialed in. Now what is happening in SIMV pressure support is there are two window periods here. One window period is called as the SIMV window period, and that is called as the SIMV window, and the other is called the pressure support window. Okay, two windows है. In that window, SIMV window, if the patient takes a breath, it will not give it. You understand? It will not give it. But in that other window, it will wait for the patient to give the breath and it will support that breath. There's a difference. Assist control में क्या होता है? Every breath that the patient takes, the ventilator assists. Here what is happening? There is an SIMV window. Okay, the SIMV window will not allow you to take that extra breath there. Clear? समझ में आ रहा है? It will not get supported also. Nothing will happen. It will not allow only. That's called the SIMV window. समझ में आ रहा है? So SIMV window and pressure support window. There is no pressure support. There is SIMV window. ठीक है?
So window is decided by what?
By an algorithm from the ventilator.
अच्छा
So certain ventilators, what happens is SIMV breath देगा ना, then it will have this to become longer. It will vary. This window period where the patient can trigger will become longer. Okay. अभी what are we thinking कि इधर बंद होना चाहिए, इधर होना चाहिए, इधर होना चाहिए. What will happen is, say for example, the patient takes an SIMV breath and takes another pressure supported breath. Okay. Then it will lengthen this part. So it is an algorithm. In the CMV, I don't know whether you have worked this servo 900 and 300 cc's. When we used to work with that, this was a very difficult thing for us because we had to adjust the control mandatory knobs as well as the SIMV. SIMV was very new for us at that time, very new. In fact, it's something that was amazing for us. So we used to change. There it is the ratio of the CMV and the SIMV. That was how it was in that. But don't confuse yourself. Now that has all become simple. It has become just set it on the ventilator. Ventilator algorithm moves it in such a way that creates two windows: an SIMV window and a patient window. That's all. That is what you must remember. Clear? Huh? Clear on this? Huh?
Sir, just one
Huh?
question. Sir, in the square waveform, the flow is not coming to zero.
Where?
This
When
first breath,
expiration starts.
ठीक है.
it's getting cut at the above level.
But it is zero now. It has come to zero here. The cycling has occurred right here. The cycling has occurred right here. You understand? Cycling has occurred here. It has moved to expiration. Whereas in the other mode, what is happening here? Cycling is occurring here. It has not reached the baseline. It has started here itself cycling. You understand? So it's flow cycle. Here. Huh? So this is flow cycling. This is flow cycling. Set pressure support. Okay. So what is pressure? What is this? What is the trigger here? Patient trigger. What is the limit?
Volume.
Limit pressure. You have set the pressure, no? You have set the pressure here. So you are limited at that pressure. And cycling?
Flow
Flow. Because here you see the flow is getting cut off. Clear? Clear on this? Huh? So that's a flow cycle, right?
Volume is going with constant
Okay.
pressure.
So next time when you are looking at a ventilator, look at it. Understand what that is. Okay, understand what that is. Okay, flow cycle, type cycle. So this SIMV can be pressure controlled also. We just not talked about SIMV, no? We told SIMV is who? This? Clear on this?
Sir, in this like set pressure.
So see, this is a diagrammatic presentation. So that's why you're getting it slightly difficult. Okay, but here what is happening over here is you are having a set pressure support. So the pressure limited है ये breath. Whereas here the volume is limited, it's the same. And the pressure is varying. Okay. Now we go to the next one where the pressure is set. Here also. So this breath type is actually triggered by the patient, limited by pressure and cycled by time, decelerating flow wave pattern. Whereas this one is triggered by the patient, limited by pressure and cycled by flow.
Flow.
So this is SIMV pressure control and pressure support. SIMV pressure control and pressure support. समझ में आ रहा है? समझ में आया कि नहीं समझ में आया? Any doubts? Clear? All right. So what is this now? If you look at this, trigger is what? Patient. You can see some deflection that is occurring. There is some deflection that is occurring. Patient trigger. What is the limit? Patient is deciding. No. Patient is deciding the limit. But what is only happening is we are giving the pressure all through the time above the baseline. That's why this didn't go under the baseline. So this is peak.
Not touching also.
It's not touching the baseline. That's why this is peak. Sound there? So this is CPAP. Nothing but CPAP. On the ventilator it's called as PEEP. Spontaneous breathing is called CPAP. Continuous, positive airway pressure. You understand? Patient decides whatever it wants to take. Big breath, small breath, rate, everything is decided by patient only. So cycling is by patient. Trigger is by patient. Limits is by patient. The only thing you have added, everything is variable here. Variable is RR. The pressure is the variable, the volume is variable, everything is variable. So in the CPAP, I want to see all. I want to see tidal volumes, I want to see pressures, I want to see RR, I want to see all of these things. You're understanding? So spontaneous effort. So you know what is the patient's actual rate demand or something? So let us go to the waveforms to be seen exactly. Okay. Let us see the waveforms, like how it will look on the ventilator. Let me have that once more. Now we are going to see it in real time and we are going to understand what's happening. Okay, we'll understand some troubleshooting, something to understand what is happening wrong. So you will understand first. These are again very basic. Okay, now this is our ventilator. This is our ventilator we are using in the hospital in the ICU. Okay, this is a Draeger Evita XL that we have in the ICU. Okay, now if you look at this is what you are looking at. This is how it looks. You see how it looks. So can you tell me what is the trigger? It's machine trigger. Machine that is time. Limit.
Volume.
Why is it volume?
It's constant.
It's constant.
Constant.
Cycling. Time. Clear? Simple? So this is actually supposed to be controlled mechanical, some control mode of ventilation. It is called as IPPV on this ventilator. Okay, it is called as, so this is pressure. Okay, so this is pressure, this is flow, and this is time, volume. You see now you can understand that कि वो pressure कैसा है, वो flow कैसा है, वो volume कैसा है. Understand variable pressure, flow, square wave flow pattern, and volume. You understood this? Now this is time. So this is scalars. These are scalars, and I'm seeing pressure that is there, that is variable here. That's why pressure is there on the screen. So this is what? This is your pressure time scalar. Okay. This is pressure time scalar. So that is your inspiration. Understand carefully. That is your inspiration. That is your inspiration. The inspiration is going on till here. Okay. Inspiration is going on till here. This is your expiration. So it's 1:2 almost, isn't it? It is 1:2. अगर 6 seconds होगा तो ये 2 seconds और ये 4 seconds हो गया. Inspiration, expiration. Now let's look down. See that? What is happening? When you look down, when you drop a perpendicular from the end of inspiration, it is coming here. So there is no flow here. There is no flow here. You understand? Since there is no flow here, this is actually an inspiratory pause. You understand? Since there is no flow there, that is an inspiratory pause. You understand? So somebody tiled an inspiratory pause on this ventilator. That's why you have no flow, okay, and you have that plateau pressure that is coming there. It's like a plateau pressure. Plateau pressure, and that's why you are getting plateau pressures. Peep, 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 peep. You understand? Now you're getting that. Clear on this? If now I made my inspiratory pause negative, 0 kar diya, no inspiratory pause, what will happen?
They will do flow.
This flow will extend till here.
Yeah.
This graph will come and stop here.
Stop here.
You understand? It will still not be constant, it will flow. You understand?
Yes.
Clear? And you see where expression ends? Expression ending right here. Starting over here. Expression is ending right here, expression starting right here. Clear? Understood this? समझ में आया? अगर if I now want to see my plateau on a continuous basis, 2 second pause I require for that. I will put an inspiratory pause. But what will happen if I put an inspiratory pause? What pressures are going to change here? What will change if I put an inspiratory pause? What is going to happen is the same tidal. See, if I make this inspiratory pause here, what is going to happen? The same tidal volume will actually go in so much time, in a shorter time. So what will happen to the pressures?
Rise.
Pressures will increase.
So if I change my I ratio, what will happen to my pressures?
Go up.
So if I make my I ratio from 1:2 to 1:4, my pressures will go up. Right? So if I change my respiratory rate from 10 to 20, my peak pressures will go. If I change my, I don't change my I ratio. I kept my I ratio as 1:2, but I change my this from RR from 10 to 20. What is going to happen? I'll explain to this once more. Okay? I have my patient on a volume control of 400. I have an RR of 10. I have an I ratio of 1:2. Okay. Now I decided, नहीं यार, this patient को हम लोग ventilate अच्छा करते हैं. So volume control 400. I made my RR 20. I made my I ratio as 1:2. What is going to happen?
Go up.
Why go up?
The rate has gone up.
So,
मिनिमम वेंटिलेशन चाहिए
हाँ?
Flowing time
मिनिट
is
वेंटिलेशन चेंज हो गया है, लेकिन प्रेशर नहीं बढ़ रहा है. वेंटिलेशन इज वॉल्यूम. वेंटिलेशन
More flow in short time.
वेंटिलेशन इज वॉल्यूम. हम लोग किसकी बात कर रहे हैं? तो कैसे प्रेशर चेंज वेंटिलेशन? प्रेशर चेंज नहीं होगा. Who says प्रेशर चेंज नहीं होगा? Hands up. You said no. हाँ? प्रेशर चेंज नहीं होगा कौन बोल रहा है? प्रेशर चेंज होगा कौन बोल रहा है? तुम लोग क्या कुछ भी नहीं बोल रहे क्या तुम लोग? Tell something. It's not exam.
Pressure change होगा.
प्रेशर चेंज होगा. Why do you feel pressure change होगा?
Because sir, the cycling time is the same. So
Cycling time has changed.
Around change.
Here RR is 10.
I
Right?
mean to
That
say the
means
inspirated ratio is the
6
same.
seconds, 6 seconds. बराबर?
Yes sir.
6 seconds, 6 seconds, 6 seconds. मैंने I ratio क्या सेट करके रखा है? 1:2. मतलब 2 seconds inspiration, 4 seconds.
Expiration.
हाँ? That means मेरा ये जो ग्राफ है, ये 2 seconds अगर मैं इसको पकड़ूं, तो ये ऐसा होके ऐसा हो रहा है. बराबर? हाँ? Right? Pause करके रखा है. Forget the pause. Let me just take the pause out. Okay? This is how it is. Right? 2 seconds.
But
ठीक है. Now what am I going to do? I am making this as 20.
20.
So मेरा breath cycle कितना हो गया?
4 seconds.
3 seconds.
हाँ 3 seconds.
3 seconds. 3 seconds.
And
3 seconds. लेकिन अभी इंस्पिरेशन कितना हो गया? 1:2. कितना हो गया ये?
1 second. 1 second.
1 second.
1 second.
ये 2 seconds था. अभी 1 second में उसको सेम टाइट वॉल्यूम डिलीवर करना है.
हाँ.
अगर उसको 1 second में सेम टाइट वॉल्यूम डिलीवर करना है, तो प्रेशर तेरा
Pressure बढ़ जाएगा.
समझ में आ रहा है?
Yes yes yes.
हाँ? You understanding this? समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
Clear? You understood now what happened? समझ में आया? So that means to say tomorrow if you just take a small thing like changing the RR, if you do this small thing like changing the RR, you can have changes in pressures, and that can be quite significant. You understand? That's why your variable remains the pressure.
Pressure.
That's why you need to see what? Peak pressure and plateau pressure on your monitor. समझ में आ रहा है? Clear? Because you have held the I ratio as constant. So if I want to change this, if I see my peak pressure not altering, that's fine. But if I change this and I find my peak pressure altering, no, I need to change this also.
Yes.
I need to do something here. Or probably not to do that. Or not do that RR thing. Don't change that RR thing. Or maybe change that volume. Do something. Because if you change the tidal volume, this will again come down. Peak pressure will come down. You're understanding? So as we make some alterations basically. Clear? So that is your inspiration. That is your expiration. Okay? Alright. Now let's go from volume control to pressure control. The same thing, we are going from volume control to pressure control. Okay. Now this is the one without, what is this kind of mode? This is, what is this? What waveform is this? Pressure and time. So pressure is going up, coming down, but here the difference is there is no inspiratory pause. This is very small, very minimal inspiratory pause at their foot. Okay, and it is a square waveform pattern. This is probably machine triggered, volume controlled because pressure is variable. Pressure is variable and time cycle. Clear on this? This is our usual volume control. Now let's convert this from volume control to pressure control. Okay, let's see how it goes. This is our volume control. Clear? This is our volume control. Now we're going to convert this from volume control to pressure control. Clear? I'm going to convert. See, this is volume control. I'm converting to pressure control. Can you see this? I'm converting to pressure control. Now in pressure control, I've set the pressures. What has suddenly happened? See, pressures have become limited. Decelerating wave flow pattern has started. And cycling has changed to time cycle. Clear? Clear on this? Pressure control. Clear? So on this ventilator, pressure control is called as BiPAP. You see, the same pressure control which we just now talked about on our graphics analysis is now called as BiPAP here. You understand? Because I have set what? I have set my frequency, I have set my pressures, I have set my peak, and I have set my inspiratory time. This is determining my I ratio. When I touch this, inspiratory time will come here.
So this is not a float.
Flow cycle, no, it's time cycle because I set the time. I set the time. It is getting cut over there. It is getting cut over there. It is getting cut over there. It's time cycle. When I say cycling, I'll show you when it comes into this. Okay? Because as of now, there is no flow cycling that I set here. I have set a RR means I have set a time. In flow cycling, no, there will be no RR only. Samjh mein aa raha hai? That is how we differentiate them, you know. On the graphic analysis, that's how we explain. But if you want to go on a practical model, you will not get RR. Samjh mein aa raha hai? Clear on this? And moreover, the breath type. What is the breath type? Constant pressure triggered by the patient, whatever triggered by machine. Flow cycle. Okay? Volumes are not shown. The volume would be the clincher for pressure support. Clear? Clear on this till now? Any doubts till now? You want to go back and see once more how it works? So this was what it was. Now let us go once more volume control to pressure control and see the differences on the waveforms. Notice very carefully, okay? Notice very carefully how it goes. So this is your volume control mode of ventilation. Clearly volume control. Top part is pressure over time, lower is flow over time. Now see, I am converting to BiPAP. See that? BiPAP. Okay, I convert to BiPAP. And now, what is happening to the BiPAP? Suddenly it has changed. It has suddenly changed to a pressure controlled form of ventilation. Pressure controlled form of ventilation. And here I have I ratio that I can do. I can change this with the I ratio. Now here, the good part of the story is I can press this and make the I ratio to be constant if I want to. Otherwise, here what is happening? The inspiratory time is only 1.2 seconds. It is not ratio. Understanding here what is happening? Or you didn't understand? I ratio was, we said 1:2, 1:3, 1:4, 2:2, you understand now? I ratio. Here we are not putting ratio. Here we are putting it as a part of the time. That explains why it is showing looking like this. You understand? What have I told over here? कि जितना भी तुम्हारा breath cycle हो, उसका 1.2 seconds is the inspiration. समझ में आ रहा है? तो inspiration उस पे cut off हो रहा है. Clear on this?
So T inspiration is time of
Inspiration in the breath. Yes. Single breath का. समझ में आ रहा है? Clear on this? If I want to set an I ratio on this ventilator, I will turn this. When I turn it, an I ratio will come here. This will light up. IE constant. I'll press that button. From that time onwards, the inspiratory expiratory ratio will remain constant. तुम्हारा 1:2 रखा तो 1:2 ही रहेगा. अभी इसमें क्या हो रहा है? तुम्हारा 1:2 का 1:2 नहीं हो रहा है. यहाँ पर 1.2 सेकेंड्स ही रहता है. तुम RR बदल दोगे तो इंस्पिरेशन 1:2 ही रहेगा. मतलब या इंस्पिरेशन 1.2 सेकेंड्स ही रहेगा. समझ में आ रहा है? Clear on this? हाँ? So there are small changes in every ventilator. ये ventilator में ऐसा है. समझ में आ रहा है? Clear? हाँ? So first and foremost, you must understand the bread type. Then only you can understand these things. Clear on this now? Clear? So now, let's see what this is. Okay. So this is the difference between volume and pressure. So you can see that, right? There's a clear difference between. So that side is
That side is volume.
Volume control.
This
controlled breath, volume control, patient trigger. This side is
Pressure.
pressure.
Pressure now.
Yes. Let go now. See, it's now going to go to bypass now. This is volume control now with a small, with no inspiratory pause. Now it's going to pressure control. Clear? You clear on this? Huh? You can understand the difference now? Huh? Okay. So now, very clearly we are seeing difference between volume control and pressure control here. Very, very clearly. Okay. Now let's look what happens to bronchospasm. Now that we know the graphics, we should understand what's happening to the graphics. So what do you see the difference here? What is the differences? Spot the differences that we saw from the earlier graph. First of all, what kind of delivery of breath this is? Is it patient triggered? Let us consider it patient triggered because you can't see it. There is a small trigger. Okay, because under the baseline, got a peak now. That's why it's under the baseline. Can't see it. Okay, let it taken as patient trigger. Patient trigger. Huh? Or let it be machine trigger. No problem. Machine trigger. Cycled by time. Limited by volume.
Volume.
Because I've set the tidal. Whatever it is, I've set a volume here. I've set a volume. No, I've set a tidal volume here. I've set a tidal volume, so it's limited by volume. 623 volume लगा के रखा है हम लोग ने. हाँ, volume is set. So it is volume limited, time cycled form of ventilation. Right? Cycling means conversion from inspiration to expiration. Cycling. Okay. Now what is happening here? What is the difference from the earlier graph?
P peak is high.
High.
P peak has gone high. P plateau has remained where it was. P peak in the earlier graph the P peak was here, no? Now the P peak has gone high and the plateau has remained where it was. Plateau has not changed. Plateau has remained where it was. P mean is 5 or 7 or something. It's remained the same. Whereas P peak has gone high. Right? Huh? Maybe. Huh? What is the other difference you're getting? What is the other difference you're getting? Huh?
Expiratory flow cut.
Sorry? So the amount of time required to expire has actually
Gone up.
prolonged. See this now, what has happened? It has increased. And there is some flow that has not reached the baseline. There is some flow that has not reached the baseline. Okay, the expiratory flow over here is actually come down. You understand? So what is this happening? This is bronchospasm. Okay, this is clear-cut bronchospasm. Okay, because what is happening? The trachea has got constricted, airways have got constricted, amount of air passing is reduced because air कम हो गया है तो flow तुम्हारा कम दिख रहा है यहाँ पर. हाँ, और उतना ही हवा तुमको बाहर निकालना है तो expiratory time तुम्हारा बढ़ रहा है. So rather than it ending here and going flat, it is going on till the next inspiration. It is ending right here. And then there is a kind of a baseline, and then going up. Clear? Huh? What is happening over here? It's supposed to end somewhere here. It's not ending here. It just keep on occurring, and even during inspiration तब तक नीचे से ही चालू कर गया. मतलब इतना हवा अंदर रह गया, बॉडी के अंदर रह गया. This is called as autopy. bronchospasm. Clear? You have peak pressures going up, you have plateau pressures remaining the way it is, and I yesterday, last time I explained to you, airway elastance is peak pressure, lung elastance is plateau pressure. So the lung elastance is remaining the same, the airway elastance has actually changed. That's why resistance has increased, that's why peak pressure has gone up. Clear? Huh? Clear? Let's go to the other one. Okay, so this is how bronchospasm looks. So this means to say, if I treat my bronchospasm, what are the changes on the ventilator I will see?
Peak pressure gone down.
My peak pressure will go down.
Expiration time shorten.
Expiration time will shorten. This will become bigger. So what do I need to do? I need to find this. I have shown this numerous occasions to many people on during rounds. See now I will find this. एक्सपेरिमेंट देखो उसमें क्या हो रहा है. हाँ, अगर ये improve अगर करेगा, if I treat this will improve. You are understanding? Bronchospasm will improve. Nothing is going to change here. What is going to change here is this and this is going to change here. That is your targets. So that is why on your Hamilton ventilator, the difference is this part is also measured. It's called expiratory time constant. It's passive. Okay. So what happens over here is, in the earlier graph, this part is your expiratory time constant. As of now, what you know is only expiration. Expiration is the whole thing. Okay. But the expiratory time constant is the time required to empty out the alveoli, empty out the airways, is only measured in a ventilator called as the Hamilton C6. Okay. So with the expiratory time constant, I have much more information. Are you understanding? So the expiratory time constant, I can say if it is increased, I'm dealing with bronchospasm, isn't it? If it's 0.6 to 0.8 is normal. If I go above that, it is bronchospasm. If it is lesser, it's compliance loss. It's compliance loss. Elastance is reduced. No, elastance increased. You understand? Okay. Clear? So bronchospasm. Clear? So you see the difference between both? That's the difference now. Can you see the difference? That's normal. That's normal. The same patient has now undergone bronchospasm. So what has occurred is the peak pressures have gone up. Mean pressures have gone up. Can you see that? And you have this particular waveform that has changed. Clear?
Yes.
Clear on that? Waveforms have changed. Clear? Now this is air hunger. Now what is air hunger? What is happening over here? What is the waveform that is? First of all, this is spontaneous. Patient is trying to breathe on his own. Okay, but in the pressure goes up, ventilator triggers, but the patient takes in more air. It tries to go towards negative. The pressure tries to go towards negative. That's why it is trying to go towards negative. Since it's trying to go towards negative, the ventilator thinks probably patient needs more breath and starts giving more breath. It triggers the ventilator. This is air hunger, COPD or air starvation. So patient is taking a breath, ventilator is supposed to pressurize the circuit properly, but the patient requires more. So, ऐसा कर रहा है. So what happens? The pressure now goes towards the baseline, and that's what is called as air hunger. So what you see here is a clear-cut demonstration of air hunger. You see that? Air hunger. So this is normal, and this what happens somewhere in the middle is somewhere air hunger. That's normal. And that's the air hunger. Okay, that's excess breath coming in the middle. Clear? Air hunger. Alright. So this means what? This air hunger means patient's bronchospasm is going on. Patient requires more breath. I need to increase the flows. I probably want to convert from this mode to a mode that gives more pressure in the circuit. Some other mode which gives more air inside the circuit. More flow inside. If I give more flow inside, probably this air hunger will reduce. Clear?
So in this mode then, the air hunger which is there in this mode, so if we increase the T inspiratory, will it,
if you increase the T inspiratory, what will happen? The flow will increase, will reduce. If you reduce your T inspiration, your I ratio, if you reduce your I ratio, I mean 1:2 से उसको 1:4 कर दिया, समझ लो. 1:2 से 1:4 कर दिया, तो inspiratory time कम हो जाएगा. अगर inspiratory time कम हो जाएगा तो उतना ही flow ज़्यादा हो जाएगा उसको. समझ में आ रहा है? फ्लो ज्यादा हो जाएगा, समझ में आ रहा है? उसको फ्लो ज्यादा मिलेगा, तो एयर अंदर थोड़ा कम होने का चांस है. बट हियर द प्रॉब्लम इज नॉट ट्रीटिंग द वेंटिलेटर, नो. द थिंग इज टू ट्रीट दैट पेशेंट. दिस इज गिविंग यू अ मॉनिटरिंग आंसर दैट ओके दिस पेशेंट इज हैविंग एयर अंदर, सो प्लीज ट्रीट हिम. समझ में आ रहा है? हाँ, क्लियर ऑन दिस? सो दैट्स व्हाट एयर अंदर लुक्स लाइक. And when you treat that air hunger, the ventilator kind of gets adjusted. That's what normally occurs. It's probably treated. So the air hunger is gone. Okay? Huh? Air hunger is gone. Now this is what happens in flow restriction. For example, you have a patient whose endotracheal tube is very small, or the patient is having bronchospasm that is continuously not getting relieved. What you are seeing over here is flow starvation. You see what is happening here? You are having this going up, okay, and this not reaching the baseline. Flow starvation. Patient is not getting the time away. Flow restriction, and this is what is occurring. Auto PEEP is getting generated just like bronchoconstriction. Okay, clear on this? So auto PEEP is nothing different on this. All right, huh? So if I treat that by actually changing my I ratio, what has happened? He has basically put a very large inspiratory pause. So the expiration has reduced. Expiratory time has reduced because very large expiratory pause. I remove the expiratory pause in this. Okay, when I remove the expiratory pause in this, the plateau pressure has gone, expiratory pause has gone. It has started. I give it more time for it to expire. Since I give more time to expire, it has reached the baseline now. You're understanding? Huh? So the inspiratory pause can be a problem. So if you put I'm just telling you what happens if you put an inspiratory pause. When you put an inspiratory pause, what is happening? Your breath is terminating at this, the flow is terminating at this, but it has not yet gone into expiration. It has not yet opened the valves to expire. Okay, so in inspiration phase to chali raha hai, expiratory valve either open ho raha hai. So the amount of expiration time is very low. So if I cut off this inspiratory pause, my inspiratory phase will end right here. If my inspiratory phase ends here, I get more time to expire and this patient expires normally. Clear? Samajh mein aa raha hai? Huh?
So there's some obstruction in the ED tube or something also to give a similar waveform then.
If there is
flow restriction. Again, if there's an
yeah,
obstruction.
anything that causes, so there are many reasons why there can be flow restriction. This is just the mechanical reason that we are talking about, that the inspiratory pause you have kept. But if you have a bronchoconstriction, if you have a kink in the tube, if you have got obstructions in the tube, all this will cause flow restriction. If you have a respiratory that is very fast, it will not empty out. Clear? Huh? This is what is going to occur. Clear? Now, see, this is the bronchospasm that is treated. Okay? Let us look. So this is normal pressure support. Normal pressure support. This is pressure support we just discussed. That the pressure remains constant. The flow patient decides. Expiration patient decides. Right? Now. So the waveform changes. You see the waveform changing? Waveform changes. Now see what happens with the simple ARDS ventilation. There's so many things that occur differently. So what did we discuss ARDS? We said we want low tidal volumes, we want tidal pressures to be less than 30. 25 is better. We wanted that low tidal volume and we want to keep a high RR because we want to keep the low tidal volume and maintain mid ventilation. So there are so many things that occur when you set a ventilator on ARDS, so many alterations that occur. This is a volume control mode of ventilation, right? Volume control, pressure is variable, flow is square wave pattern, and you have this flow that you see. Now this is ARDS. Okay, you see a mean pressure that is more than 33. Okay, there's a mean pressure more than 30. There's a plateau pressure that is more than 30. Okay, this is a case of ARDS. Now what has happened over here is, unfortunately, tidal volumes are quite high. Okay, tidal volumes being very very high, I decided no, this is too much. Okay, this is ARDS. It's alarmingly high. 833 tidal volume. You don't give so much. Even if it is 70 kilos, it will be 420 kilos. So I change the tidal volume. Okay, so I'm going to change the tidal volume. In fact, I made it down. I got it down to 570, 560. Okay, got to 560. Immediately, what happens is the pressures will probably change. Okay, let us see what happens when we reduce that. Okay, so you see the waveform has come down. See the waveform has come. Can you see that? Waveform has come down, but the I ratio has actually remained the same only. What has happened is the inspiratory time has reduced. Okay, so pressures have come down less than 30. Okay, 26 हो गया. Clear? But the plateau pressure has still remained 33. So not adequate. Whatever reduction of tidal volume I have done, whatever, this is still injurious because I find the plateau pressure to be 33. Though I have the peak pressures have come down, plateau pressure has still remained at 33. The PEEP is 8. The more blackness that you see the more black you see on the pressure waveform, the more the mean airway pressure. The mean airway pressure is seen over here. Mean airway pressure. Okay, this is the peak. Clear? Now minute ventilation is 5.1 here. As I have changed the ventilator, it is settling now. It is settling. Minute ventilation is coming up. Because I change the tidal volume, so minute ventilation is coming down. So minute ventilation has come to 5 now. Okay, let it settle down. 4.99. And now I am changing the RR because I want a higher minute ventilation. Now 4.9 is too less. I change the RR 14. The moment I change the RR, what has actually occurred? The minute ventilation has increased. Minute ventilation increased. Clear cut. 5.21. 5.36 is going up. Okay. My inspiratory time has remained the same, 1.9. So now I have at least gone to high RR. Has at least gone to a RR that is elevated with a satisfactory minute ventilation. Okay, 7 liters, 6 liters, I'm at that minute ventilation that this patient required. Okay, 7.34, 7.39 pe aa gaya. So I still don't want this kind of tidal volume. Okay, so I want to reduce it further. It's still high, right? So I'm coming down. I came down to 490. So when I come down to 490, again what is going to happen? The peak pressures are going to come down. 28 say 26 okay, peak pressures. Peak pressures are coming down here. Peak pressures are coming down. Okay, and I'm going to have a reduction in the minute ventilation here. I'm having a reduction in minute ventilation here. Clear cut ARDS, I'm just altering it so I can come down to lower tidal volume, but I have to maintain this. I have to maintain this because that is, if it goes alarmingly low, I can have CO2 retention. I'm going further down. I'm not happy with 490. So 420 because it's tidal volume, I just said 70 kilos, it's started somewhere around 400s. So 420 tak aa gaya. Minute ventilation is further coming down, okay? Okay, peak pressures are coming down. You see the variability, because of the variability, the peak pressures are coming down. Plateau has remained at 26. Just by changing tidal volume, the plateau pressure has come down from 33 to 26. But just changing tidal volume, right? By just changing tidal volume, the plateau pressures have come from 33 to 26. Here, by just changing tidal volume, just come down to 26. Clear now? But what has happened to my minute ventilation is still reducing. Because my tidal volumes are very low, my ventilation is still going down, further down. So these are the things and the variables that you have to be having on your ventilator to understand ki kya ho raha hai. If you don't have these on your ventilator, how do you understand ki what is happening? Are you understanding? So I have to increase my RR, so it has gone low. So I have increased my RR to 16, okay? And let's see what happens at 16. I ratio is held constant, okay? So what is changing? Let's see what changes, okay? What is changing now? I have to change my I ratio because what has happened? It became 1:1. See? When I change my RR to 16, it became 1:1. Okay? So that? You are understanding now? Concept samajh mein aaya? See, what has happened is, I changed my RR, my I ratio changed. So if I don't touch my other button, I will not know what's happening. Because I touched this button, that's why I got the I ratio here. You're understanding? It was 1:1, which could have generated auto P, which would have got dynamic hyperinflation, could have got a lot of problems. It has changed now, okay? So now I want to increase my oxygenation, right? So since I want to increase my oxygenation, then whatever method I use, I have increased the PEEP to 10. See what has happened immediately? The blackness has increased. The waveform has gone up. With PEEP, the waveform has gone up. Nothing has happened to this part, but the waveform has gone up. The blackness has increased. Mean airway pressures have slightly gone up from 26 to 28. Okay? Again, I am changing my I ratio to 1:1 because I want oxygenation to improve further. When I make it further 1:1, my inspiration now increases. See this? See this? My blackness has further increased. My blackness has further increased. See, I ratio. So more oxygenation is occurring because at this rate, the mean airway pressure goes to 28, and I have got more time in inspiration. Okay, because I want oxygenation to improve. So I want to 1:1 now because I want the oxygenation to improve. Okay? So I feel no, the plateau pressures have gone up to 31. There's a problem. Because I increase I ratio, change the I ratio, plateau pressures have gone up. So now I have to reduce the tidal volume further because the plateau pressures are more than 30. So just one alteration, if you don't have these pressures, you will not know where to go to. So I have now I have gone, I reduce the tidal volume to 400. It has reduced the plateau pressure to 30. Maintain my I ratio as 1:1 because I want the oxygenation benefit. My minute ventilation is further going. I'm going to stabilize at a certain point, 6.45, 6.44. So I still want the blood pressure further down. It's 30. I said 20. Here in 25 is better. So I'm reducing the tidal volume further. So I reduce my tidal volume to 380. When I reduce to 380, what's going to happen to my plateau pressure? It probably has to come down further. Look at the change in the graph. Okay, the graph has settled down, pressures have started coming down. P mean from 20 to come to 27, 48 to 44, P flat has come to 29. Still not comfortable. I want it further low, 350. Okay, when I come to 350, I am again waiting. Mid ventilation is coming down. Plateau pressures have now started coming down. Okay, mid ventilation is 6. 6 is okay. 6 is okay. 6. Okay, 28 plateau pressure, 26 mean pressure, 42 peak pressure. I've kept the peep at 30. 10 is this auto peep has started developing here. 30. Now you see auto peep developing, right? Auto peep started developing here because 10 we have said 13 is coming. So I want to increase this further because it has gone less than 6 liters. It's going to 17. When I go to RR17, my ratio is slightly changed. Okay, my ratio, I can see it on the ventilator. The acceleration is further reduced. The expiration time is further reduced. Okay, expiration time is reduced. Obviously, I need to go there and change that and see what's happening. Okay, so it has become 7:1 now. See what has happened? When I change the RR, I need to change that back. I just changed it from 16 to 18 and it became 1.7:1. Inverse. So I have to go back here to change that back. To understand, just two breaths I changed, isn't it? Now I feel that okay, my plateau pressure has come to 28, my minute ventilation is more than 6 liters, I got an inspiratory expiratory ratio that is comfortable for me, my plateaus are okay, my mean pressures are 26. So now it looks kind of okay. Here. Now, at the moment plateau pressures are fine. I don't see flow restriction on my expiratory flow waveform which I was seeing a while ago. Okay. And my minute ventilation has gone up after that. After getting my RR. Okay. So what you can understand from this is that one alteration makes a whole amount of changes on your ventilator provided you understand what you're doing. Okay, you have to understand what you're doing. You saw how much time it took. This is in a simulation. This is actually in a simulation. If I do it bedside, it's going to take more time, no? अभी क्या ऐसा हुआ, अभी क्या हो रहा है, So that's why it takes time to set the ventilator. You cannot just set a tidal volume and a respiratory rate. You know, if you have all your parameters in place, you will notice the differences and then you will adjust the ventilator in such a way that you are being as physiologically good as possible and at the same time as less injurious as possible. And to do that, you need to touch each and every button. Every ventilator is different, so it is not possible for you to touch one ventilator and understand all the ventilators. So you get a new ventilator, you check all the buttons and understand what is this, what is this, what is this. Don't understand, I am there, you can ask me, I will tell you what is there. You understand? But if you don't touch it, you will never understand. You will never understand. What button here is shown as P mean would be somewhere as P flat, somewhere as a P peak. You have to understand what you are looking at. And that will understand only after you are actually going to look at these ventilators again and again, graphics again and again. That is when you will understand most of these things. Okay?